Okay, so we are now live. This is Money Talks, the podcast, here with Stacey Blunt. On the Money Talks podcast, we talk about personal finance, financial literacy, savings, investing. We also throw in some entrepreneurship as well. And this episode is a little special. I'm here with Lourenzo Smith, James Lorenzo Smith, one of my best friends, one of the first people I met when I moved to New York. So, Zoe, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, man, thanks for having me officially.
Definitely. So I'll give you guys some background about how Zoe and I met. I actually did not see him in person until the first day we moved into our New York apartment. And we kind of just moved in, literally didn't know each other. We became friends, and he's become one of my best friends. So that's why I'm happy.
We got sandwiches, too.
We did get sandwiches. He took me to my first New York deli, which is a good experience. But now we're here 3 years later, so long overdue.
Yes.
But I do, Zoe, when I give you some time to just talk about your background a little bit, how you grew up, and then we can start getting into some of the topics today.
Cool. Born and raised Dallas-Fort Worth, two traditional Caribbean African parents. Played every sport under the sun except for tennis. That probably wasn't the sport I was supposed to be playing. Got a full ride scholarship to run track and play football at Fordham University. 2011, stayed out here, been here since.
So you've been in New York for almost a decade.
Almost a decade of my life in good old skyscrapers and freezing cold, stinky subways.
Yeah. So right now you're in the advertising business.
Yep.
And you've been doing that since graduation.
Correct.
So talk about how the advertising business actually works here in the mecca for advertising, New York City.
So I would say set up almost like a bank. You come in as associate, move to senior associate. Some people move straight to manager or supervisor. Then you have associate directors, managing directors, and you have a managing partner. Mm-hmm. Currently, I am a supervisor. Yep. So I work on Northwell Health, which is a hospital or pharma branch, and we just help with their local media. So that's from everything offline to online.
So, and you're in digital, correct?
Correct.
Talk about that process a little bit of, when you're creating a digital advertising, campaign for someone.
Cool. So typically you'll get briefed from the client. They're like, hey, we have $1 million. We want to go to market with this new product. You're like, okay, cool. Give me your audience, what media channels you think would work. And then we go on our end. We use our tools and our prior knowledge to put that $1 million to work and make sure that you have a high ROI.
Okay. And so when you're first coming in through those ranks of the advertising business, you don't make that much money, do you?
No.
So talk about, when you were first coming in, what they were paying you. And then we'll talk about, how you progressed through that.
Well, most people that know you come into advertising, everyone has to earn your keep.
Yeah.
So a standard salary for assistants can range anywhere from 30 to 35. I was making 35.
35,000?
35,000 straight out of college. You would have thought, oh, I graduated Fordham, I'm gonna get a job like everyone that works at a bank and we make 80 grand, but that was not the case. Most people actually don't know I was actually homeless when I graduated Fordham University.
Wow.
So I graduated prestigious university, I come from a traditional background, so you either make it, you go back home. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna thug it out and there's gonna be a way. So yeah. I slept on one of my friend's couches, paid him $700 a month. Mm-hmm. My train pass was $300 a month. So you start doing the math there. It's you get a check, it's maybe $1,500. $700, that's already gone. So yeah. I had $250 after taxes to live off of in New York City. So that's that taught me
And how long was that process?
That process was a year and a half.
A year and a half of couch surfing.
It was rough, but it taught me perseverance, taught me how to maneuver, taught me how to save, mm-hmm. taught me how to finesse.
Yeah.
And those are kind of the three main qualities of a New Yorker. If you can't do that, you're not going to survive. I guarantee you, if you don't have those qualities.
Okay, and so you started at 35. Mm-hmm. You worked that job. What company was that at?
That was at Mediacom.
Mediacom. And then how long were you at Mediacom?
I was at Mediacom for 2 great years, and then the business I was on got moved to another agency, mm-hmm. and all the other accounts that were there were mainly pharma, or there weren't any more positions. So I worked myself to another agency, OMD, where I worked on Infiniti.
Okay,
National.
And so making that transition from your first job out of college mm-hmm. to your next job, what was the salary? What was the bump that you got?
Got the bump, moved from about 45 to 60.
Okay, that's pretty substantial.
I was like, okay, I got money to go out now.
And I think that was around the first time, mm-hmm. the time we were moving in together in New York, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then so you didn't make another jump.
Yes.
to another company. What was that other company?
Currently at Horizon.
Currently at Horizon. And now, what were you making at Horizon?
I was making 80. That was
80. Okay.
Some people that sound like a great number, but it just depends. So like Horizon is one of the last private firms. So what that means is like you have your holding companies where the staff teams like based on the needs, the clients, and the budget. But private companies are like, hey, okay, they're going to spend $300 million in advertising. We're going to make sure that this team is staffed like to the T.
Yeah.
Like if they need a budget analyst, the budget analyst needs an assistant. So like all that gets backed into. It's like that's why they are able to afford like, hey, we can give you 80 grand, but most agencies would be like, we'll give you 70 or 65 because of the position. But yeah.
And so you're working on something else. We'll talk about that, in a little bit. But, so you made your progress of making $35K, pretty much homeless, living on someone's couch, paying for a couch, to now where you're actually pretty established in the advertising business and you're making upwards of $80K.
Yep.
That process had to be rough.
It sucked.
Talk about it.
It was crazy only because I worked on plethora of different businesses. I worked on auto, fashion, retail, beauty, what else? Fast casual, Subway. So it was constantly moving parts, and advertising works so fast. It's like, hey, you get briefed. In between that brief, you have typically like 3 to 4 weeks, and then you're launching a campaign, and you're doing that over and over, month to month. And then at the same time, you're trying to live your life, but you're not making any money.
Yeah.
So you have to find ways to be creative. Like, hey, I only have $500 for food, $500 for what you're partying or whatever, hanging out with your friends, or like going to sports games, going to concerts. So you just like find ways to like, hey, I'm gonna take $100 and save that. So you really have $400 a month to live off of. And it got to a point where I was like, oh, like I think I know how to do this now. And then when it starts getting challenging, we're just like, oh, like I have to catch a flight to go do this. And it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to get that money for 2 paychecks because I have to expense it. So like that was the other challenges, like certain stuff like that comes into play.
Okay, and so you were talking about saving a little bit and, making a budget. I don't think you had something set in stone, but you were able to make it work. And so I do want to ask you the question now. Do you have some type of savings account? And, when did you start saving and actually seeing, your money start to stack up instead of just living off that $250 or that $500 a month?
So I had just a normal Chase checking savings, and then got to a point where I was like, you know what, you put $200, $300 in there, you're out one night, you're like, damn, I really don't want to go overdraft. Let me just pull $50 out of my savings. And then that repetitive behavior starts adding up. You're out one day, you're like, damn, I had like $5,000 in my savings. Now I have like 200.
Yeah.
So I remember it was, what years? Probably like a year and a half ago. I was like, yo, how can I put my money into a savings account and get interest? And you're like, well, actually, there's this thing called Marcus by Goldman Sachs. Yep. And it probably has one of the highest interest rates in the market, either that or Bank of America. Yep. And you put your money in, it's like, all right, you just let it grow. And over a while, that money starts turning into a nice little chunk. And that's the money I've been using. So like, hey, we got to pay our deposit to move in the apartment. That's what I just like pull that out. Yep. It sucks, but like that's where the money is. Like, that's probably my other savings. What else do I do? 401k, obviously. And I've been big. So I come from an African household, and they're big on this thing called susu, which is you probably have like 10 people. You each put in $40. At the end of the month, one person gets all of that money to use it for whatever you want. But for us, our cousins were like, you know what? Let's put in 100. So you have 5 people, that's $500 that you're guaranteed at some point in the year you're gonna get. Yeah. Some people are like, I don't want to put my money into that. It's like, well, that you're guaranteed that money at some point. So like when you're down.
I've never heard of that.
Really?
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's awesome because like it was like a thing in the community. Like some people put $1,000. So think about that. You have 5 people. At any point in the year, you can have 5,000. And then you have your schedule. So some people are good scam artists. They'll get it to like, all right, you can always elect to not put money in. Knowing that it's going to be January and your name is January, you're going to be, all right, I'm not going to put money in next month, so I'm going to double up. Yeah. But we have rules like, yo, you cannot do that. You have to put money in every time. So that's another way to save.
Wow. So it's called Susu?
Susu.
And I'm going to start doing that, actually. I'm going to pick, like 12 guys and say, hey, let's put together some money. And you do this every month. And then we'll pick somebody. Obviously, everybody, out of that group will be able to get something. That's actually an amazing idea. I never thought about that, but I'm going to start using that.
Hopefully IRS is not listening.
Okay, so we talked about your personal savings. Now let's go into the other side of it, the other side of the coin, debt. right?
Yes.
So I want to ask you, do you have any debt? And if so, what's your plan on paying off that debt?
Yes. So if you don't know, I have a creative company, production studio called Slated Vision, and I have my normal Discovery card, and then I have another Discovery card, which is the Miles program, and I use that as like my business card. So like, we need a camera, or we need film, or we need lighting. I use that for anything.
Yep.
So it got to the point where we had 2 shows, and a lot of that credit built up. And most people don't know that's where your interest comes in. So like, if you don't pay that $100, the $100 rolls over to next month. Now it's $150, and it just keeps going so on and so forth. And then I got to a point where I'm like, oh. So I think I have like, I was telling you the other day, I have like $3K that I need to pay off. And I was like, should I take out one of those Marcus loans and like pay it back? And I was like, no, you should probably just pay lump sums until you get to the point where it's at 0, because now you're using that card for your business and not the card using your business for like them. So that's how I've been dealing with that credit issue.
Okay, and you don't have any student loans?
No, thank God. I graduated Fordham at $0 in my bank, but I had 0 debt.
But it's a lot better than some people who are coming out of college, right?
I would definitely not want to come out negative. But a lot of football players or athletes or whoever was at Fordham, they took out the subsidized loans, and you could buy cars, or you put down payments to like a house or anything. But when you graduate, that interest is at what? I think it's like 30 or like 25.
It all depends on the loan where you got it, but it's pretty.
It's high. So I always saw that. I'm like, man, I really want to like buy a car so I'm good when I graduate. And I see people that are like, man, I'm $7,000 in debt, and I work construction. So I'm like, hey, I'm glad I didn't take that loan.
Okay, yeah. And so we did have a discussion about you paying off that debt, right? And you had asked me the question, should I take out a personal loan to pay off other debt? And we kind of have a discussion, like just a regular discussion. I said, do you think it's smart to take out debt to pay off debt? In some cases, it could be, right? But in your case, since it's a balance that's, you can actually, make those payments. We talked about some other things, right? So different ways to pay it off. And you were asking about, if I were to take out a loan and pay it off, what should I do? And one thing I recommended was, if you take out a personal loan to pay off credit cards, close out those credit cards, right? Because what you're going to do is you're going to end up racking up debt again. Somehow, some way, it always, happens like that.
Emergencies come and go.
Exactly. And so that gets me to the topic of having an emergency fund. So we did say you have some type of savings set up. Do you have an emergency fund that's specifically used for things that come up, like medical, or you need to take a flight back home or anything like that?
I didn't have one set up until I recently got in a sense where I'm like, oh, I'm about to move. Yeah. To the viewers and listeners out there, I'm about to move, and I really don't want to dig into that savings that I've accrued for the months and years. How can I set up something like another savings account or open another bank account? Like, hey, I'm only going to put this money here for emergencies. So like, hey, we want to go buy a car. We're touching only this money. We're not touching my personal savings. We're not touching my investments. We're not touching anything else. Like, that emergency fund that's what it's for. So definitely just started doing that.
Okay. And so you said if you want to purchase a car, in my opinion, an emergency fund should only be used for things that are unexpected. Yeah. Right?
Burst.
I would say personal savings should be used for things like buying a car or putting a down payment on a house. But an emergency fund should be, and this all depends on what you do, but it should be around 3 to 6 months of your normal monthly expenses, just sitting in an account. It could be a savings account, it could be a CD or something like that, but something where you really don't have immediate access to, so it's not going to be alongside your checking account, but it's something that, let's say, if for any reason, God forbid, you had to go home because of an emergency, you could use those funds for it. Or if, let's say, you had needed to get a new suit or something like that for a huge meeting, that would be an emergency fund. Okay. So now we know you have Slated, right? Slated Vision.
Best production studio now in the world.
So I do want to talk about that. So let's talk about some of your side hustles, side passions. Because when we first moved out here to New York, you were doing some things around modeling, right? Then you got into photography and production and things like that. So talk about your side hustles and talk about Slated Visions as well.
So yeah, when I first graduated, I've always been like the creative type. I was always telling people about like fashion brands that are going to pop off, small companies that are startups that are going to be cool when we graduate. But then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to, what's the worst that could happen? I could succeed.
Yeah.
So started modeling, but had the football body. So agencies are always like, you can do fitness. I'm like, I don't want to do fitness. I want to do fashion runway. They're like, you're 5'11", you're bulky, you don't look good in Celine or the high fashion brand. So I was always like, okay, maybe modeling's not my thing.
Yeah.
Or if I'm doing it, it's like streetwear where I'm covered up. You can't see like the muscle or whatever that the agencies didn't like. So that built up to us. I'm like, wait, I have the eye. Like I can make stuff look cool. Let me just start taking pictures because my dad used to be a photographer, but he did like parties. And I was like, man, I think I can do this. So he gave me my first camera, Minolta. What is it? I think it's a 7,000 or 5,000, one or two. Anyways, it was a Minolta film camera. I still use it to this day. Mm-hmm. And that turned into Slated. Me and one of my friends, we started it. We bumped heads, so we split but I kept Slated. He started his same type of company, but turned it into, I do video, production, do photography, do casting, anything you need in like creative space, like Slated touches on. And it got to a point where I'm like, you know what, I need to hire someone. So I had another friend that's in the same creative mindset. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna bring you along, help me with projects. Like, if you have ideas that you want to incorporate, let's do it. And then it spiraled, and we were like, yo, let's have our first show. And we had our first show in LES, which was a huge success. Honestly, I was like terrified. I was like, I remember Stacey told me, he was like, you needed a show, like show people what you got. I'm like, no one's gonna show up. It's gonna be my 5 homeboys be drinking a bottle of Jameson, just chilling. And the first show we had 300 people show up, and it was nuts. And I was
300 people in Manhattan.
In this little tiny shop. It was super hot. It was foggy.
Yeah.
We had people drinking in the street. So like it was an experience. I'm like, wow, if I can actually put some construction around this and like tune it up, make it more like a corporation, like this could like boom.
Yeah.
So then we started doing some projects, and then I met this model / singer / creative one day in the studio because one of my friends, she's like, hey, I have a friend that has this sunglasses brand. And I was like, oh, all right, another one.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing these like small stuff, and I'm like, I'm tired. I want to do big stuff. She's like, no, it's like pretty substantial. They just don't have a budget for like photography or like creation. Like, can you help us? I'm like, all right, put together a plan.
Free work.
Yep. And people don't understand free work gets you to the money. Mm-hmm. You keep doing small projects. One person's going to talk to them and like, hey, all right, well, I'm going to pay this person because it's cheaper than going to an agency.
Yeah.
So we ended up shooting for them, and they took the photos and turned them to billboards. They used it for their store. They use it for their advertising now. So that was like my first like
international
campaign. And I was for free, and I was like, wow. So I'm putting that out there. It was for free. We didn't make any money, but that established ourselves like, hey, we're not just local Brooklyn Bushwick guys that take photos.
Yeah.
So that was like how the whole business like boomed, and it's starting to pick up now. We're doing more like artist graphics, like album covers. We did 3 album covers. Like, oh, wait, no, we did 5 album covers last year. Correction. So, yeah.
And so in the matter of, let's say, a year and a half, you started a business, but it was one of your co-founders.
Yep.
So you took it by yourself, and you made it into what it is today.
Correct.
So you've had multiple art shows in Manhattan that had great turnouts, both in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. You've had an international art campaign. You've had album covers on some pretty recognizable albums. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel like my ideas are going in the right place, but I know I've just seen people start to hit that start hitting that cap, and you're like, all right, I'm the man. Like, I'm not the man at all. Like,
yeah.
Our company made under $5,000 last year. We didn't work with the artists that we thought we were going to work. Like, a lot of people, like the handshake thing that we were talking about earlier, it's like, oh yeah, we'll work. Like, and I'm just like, all right, cool. This is a big artist. It'll be good for Slated. But it turns into a fact where you're just meeting people, and it's like false promises. It's like empty promises. So I'm like, all right, like I see it. I see the potential, but I know. And then I look at other people's companies. I'm like, oh, okay, this is the right way to do it because I've seen it. And then when it's the wrong way, you see you learn your own failures. So like, from myself, I learned like, hey, you can't put all your eggs into one basket. You can't just only do photography. And that was another thing with the campaign. That was the first time shooting digital, like for like a job. Like,
yeah, because you usually shoot film, correct?
Yeah. So that was like, I was like, oh, if it's that easy, maybe I should diversify our like portfolio. Like, we can also shoot digital and film. So that was like also like something I learned in that experience.
Okay. Wow. And so I do want to talk about the fact that you guys really didn't make money for a year and a half.
Correct.
And when we talk about side passions, right? Side passions, a lot of people pursue, those side passions to eventually make money.
Correct.
Or to build some type of prestige or do something where they can say, okay, this is my, side business. I make a certain amount of money from this so I can actually, subsidize my life.
Correct.
But a lot of people wouldn't work for, let's say, a year and a half for free to pursue their side passion.
Correct.
But you did. Why is that?
For me, I just know the future, and the future is content.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always going to be a need for it. So I know there's people that probably get paid. When I go out and shoot, I don't charge because I know at the end of the day, this person now knows that I can do this and my name's out there.
Yep.
So when it's time for the paid gigs, that's when the money comes in. So I just know for a fact, like, hey, one day, not even one day, like the future is what you make it. So like I know for a fact we're gonna get that one big job, and then the floodgates are gonna open, and then you're just gonna see our work everywhere. So I'm like, you know what, consistency is like a big thing.
Yep.
So like definitely like there's times where you're like, damn, why am I doing this? I'm not getting paid. Like I'm losing money. It costs $8 to like $12 to get a roll of film developed, plus scanning. And I'm doing that every weekend. Summer, I had no summer also. Like, you have no fun time. Everyone be like, hey, we're gonna go out. I'm like, I gotta shoot in like an hour in Coney Island. So that turns into like, you have to be really passionate about it and feel like, what's the purpose that you're bringing? Am I bringing just another picture? Or am I bringing like good content and helping the artist brand themselves?
Yeah. And so it seems like you love it.
Love it.
Right? And I think that helps you because when you're doing things like a side passion or a side hustle, right, you have to put all of your energy into it.
All of it. If not,
and
people notice.
Exactly. And that's after you've worked all day at your normal 9 to 5, right?
Yep.
And so I definitely would say it takes a lot of dedication and consistency, like you said, is key into building out that platform, because it could be a year, it could be 3 years, 5 years,
20
before you make $1. It could be all out of pocket.
Yep.
And you did have some shows that you put up the money for up front.
Yep.
You had a great turnout, but still, it was mainly just about getting your name out there. So I do respect you for that.
Thank you.
But now, like we were talking about, in order to support those side passions, you need a 95.
Yes.
And so you have moved around in the world a little bit. And I think that's something our generation, millennial generation, gets a stigma for, about moving job to job.
Yeah.
But you did it for certain reasons. So talk about that.
So for me, I just realized, okay, if I'm going to take Slated serious, it's not just going to be me hanging out with my friends every now and then and taking pictures. I need higher income.
Yeah.
So some people were like, all right, I'm going to work the same job until I get promoted to the next position, which is nothing wrong with that. I respect it. But for me, I was like, hey, if I know I'm not going to get promoted on this account or at this agency based on the fact that maybe I'm not what they want in the promotion, maybe there's no room for that promotion. I'm like, okay, there's 20 other million jobs. It's like the advertising space is so crazy. Like you could be emailing someone today, they're at another place tomorrow. And that's just because money talks.
Yeah.
So
Money talks.
No pun intended. But for me, I was like, all right, I need to make business moves. So when CEOs at like Facebook leave to go to Twitter, people are like, why would you do that? That's so bad for your brand. It's like, I have financial like needs. I have like things that I need to afford, or I just need the life changes. So for me, I was like, yo, Slater's not going to go anywhere unless we put more money into it. So I made jumps that are needed, and now it's starting to go because people are starting to notice. I'm like, yo, that was you that took that picture? I'm like, yeah, man, it's starting to boom up.
Yeah. And so some of those jumps you talked about are just, job to job, but now you're doing something else.
Correct.
In addition to moving to a new job, you're also moving to a new city. And this is something that's been one of your long time goals, right? Moving to the city of Angels, LA.
City of Angels, go Lakers.
and so talk about why you wanted to move out to LA in general, and that whole process of, the 3 years when you first told me you were going to move to LA to where we are now.
Correct. So I've always loved entertainment industry. I grew up in entertainment in the church. People don't realize it's entertainment. But then I saw like, hey, every time I went to LA, it was the vibe I was looking for. But I knew money-wise, I couldn't afford it. It's a whole different lifestyle. Everything's spread out. If you don't have the financial means, you're stuck in one little cohort. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go to school in New York by any means, build up my rapport, build on my net worth, and then when I get to a certain point, I can move to LA and work on bigger projects. Yeah. So there's fewer but bigger. So LA is mainly like studios, and New York is mainly creators. So you always see people, on my way to LA for interview or this or that is because that's where the actual projects are at. So I know for me, we'll get into it later, but one of my 5-year plans is to work on production or award ceremonies, because that turns into, you're like, hey, why don't we just make this award show? And that's where like the real money is in production and content.
All right, so I do want to talk about an important topic when it comes to finance, and this is talking about finances with your significant other, and not specifically finances, but also credit. So since you do have a significant other, do you have those conversations with her?
We do have a lot of those conversations because her family background, a lot of them are in finance or banking or wealth management. So that's like a big topic because growing up, my parents, everything's cash. Everything's cash. But then it got to a point where like, oh, you need credit. Like they knew about credit, but like Africans, Caribbeans, cash. Because that's what you know for a fact. I have this $100. I know what this $100 is going towards. But if I have $100 credit, I can use that in multiple different ways besides cash. But yeah, we definitely have those conversations daily because we're like, hey, it's gonna get to a point where how's our money gonna help our family? Do we want to start a trust? Do we want to have our kids have credit cards? Do we want joint bank accounts? Do we want to invest in the same things? Like, definitely have those conversations.
And do you think it's better to have those conversations now, right, before you guys are married, versus not knowing their financial picture, their situation, and then getting into that relationship?
I think it's extremely important because then you know what page you're on. So most couples don't even know how much the other person makes. Yeah. When I got promoted, I was like, babe, I make 80 grand now. She was like, oh, you got money? I'm like, no, I just want you to know so that when we're out and you order the steak and lobster, I can afford it now. But back in the day, like I'm like, yeah. But yeah, definitely. I think it's extremely important because they let you know what page you're on. They let you know, are our goals aligned? Yeah. And they'll let you know what your picture looks like. So if your girlfriend only makes 20K, you make 80, you're probably not going to get a house in the hills. But if y'all both make 80, you can put down a nice down payment for a condo, or you can put down a nice payment for a small property, or you can go buy a crappy property in Texas, flip it, and y'all make your money back than your salary. So definitely I think it's extremely important. And I got preached that when I went to I forgot what the seminar it was, but it was somewhere in New York, and the guy was just like, most couples definitely don't know how much each other make. So I put that in the back of my mind. I'm like, all right, me and my girlfriend got super serious. I'm like, we need to talk about finance. We need to talk about our picture. What's our 5-year, what's our 10-year, what's our 20-year plan? Like, what are those real goals? And write them down. Not just like have the casual like wine conversations. Like we write everything down. We text each other about it. We screenshot like, hey, remember we said we were going to buy this? Remember we said we were going to put this in this account or this and that? So yeah,
now's the time, right?
Now is the time. If not, when you get to 40 years old, like, damn, I want to retire. I'm like, babe, we have no money. We saved. Well, I have my money saved. We don't have like our money saved that we can.
And it's sad to say, but sometimes that's the reality with a lot of couples, right? Like you said, they don't have those conversations up front. But then when it comes time to, let's say, buy a house or get a car or something like that, the credit on one side might not be as good as the other. They might both be bad. The income might be higher on one side than the other, and there's different expectations, right? And so you have to sometimes set those up front and say, okay, here's exactly how much I make. Here's my credit. Here's my financial situation. I have outstanding debt, right? And you have to do that with the other person as well, because only when you know the entire financial picture, all of the debt each person has, all of the the credit scores from both people, right? The incomes that everyone's getting, then you can make a plan and say, okay, here's what we're working with. Here are some of our goals, and here's how we're going to accomplish them. Correct?
Correct. 100%, if not 200.
Yeah. And so I do want to talk about the fact that sometimes African families, they don't really talk about personal finances or credit with their kids.
Definitely.
Is that something that your parents did with you, or is it something that you just had to learn growing up?
So both of my parents are actually twins, so they come from huge families. Okay. So my dad's side of the family, military. He has 7 brothers and sisters, so everything was more of like, hey, you're on your own, learn and go. Yeah. My mom's side of the family is all girls, so they were preached more about like finances, saving. But the manly side is like, hey, do it for yourself. Every man for themselves. You make X, put X in the bank, and whatever is left, that's what you're spending. So whenever my dad had us, he was like, hey, I'm gonna let you know I worked extremely hard to put you guys through school. When it's time for college, you have to figure out what you want to do. You're gonna take a loan, you're gonna pay for yourself, or you're not gonna go.
Yeah, flat out.
Flat out. told us, and we were like, that's one thing I appreciated from my parents. They never, like, we didn't grow up with, so to say, like the silver spoon. We grew up like extremely like open, extremely hardcore in values.
Yeah.
So they were like, hey, like, we work really hard to make sure you guys are good through your high school days. Growing up, you got your lunch, you never miss a meal, lights are always on, water's always on. You're an adult now. You're going to pay for your school.
Yeah.
You're going to get a scholarship, or you're not going to go. And for me, I was like, okay, I play multiple sports. I'm going to find a way.
Yeah.
And football was my outlet.
Okay. And how did you use football as a platform, right? Because you used that to get a scholarship,
Yep.
which allowed you to go to college, come to New York, and eventually do what you're doing now.
Correct. So for me, football was, I use it as a business. So football is all about likeness. And I grew up in Texas, which is, if most people don't know, that's like the NFL before you get to the NFL.
I would say Texas is probably second tier to Ohio.
Oh my gosh, here we go. Here we go. So you got Texas, you got California, you have Ohio, you have Southern Florida.
And California.
As well. Those are like the hubs of football, like dynasties. So you have a lot of great NFL players that come out of there, Hall of Famers. So for me, I was like, all right, what am I going to do to stand out? And I was never the strongest. I was never the biggest, but I was the fastest.
Okay.
So most people don't know, at one point in time, I was the fastest kid in Texas. And I ran 100 meters at 10.35.
Wow.
That's not wind dated, so don't try me. So from there, I was introduced, that opened a lot of doors. So I met Michael Johnson. I met Justin Gatlin. He still follows me on Twitter. Shout out to Justin Gatlin. I've met a lot of Olympians. And from there, I'm like, okay, and explain, like, your sport isn't your way. That's your brand. Yeah. Everyone's fast. Everyone's strong. Everyone in the area is black. So they're like, how are you going to stand out? So for me, I always made it a point to like stand out. So I was always fast.
Yeah.
So I didn't try to juke and do all this other stuff. I was always catch the ball, score. Catch the ball, score. So that became like my thing. And my name rung out through like the local area. Then it started getting bigger and bigger. But as you know, coaches leave, programs change, and a lot of my offers fell through because, one, injuries, two, coaches leave.
Where'd you have some of your Division I offers from?
Let's see. Florida, Arkansas State, where else? So mine was a mix of football and track.
Okay.
So we can mix that in too. Florida State, Navy, my grades weren't good enough. Air Force, my grades weren't good enough. So that was also another part. So people think like, oh, you're good at sports, you're going to get automatic. No, you have to get a good SAT score, ACT score, and your grades have to match.
Yeah.
So you can have a high ACT score, but they look at your grades and like, this kid isn't worth the investment of giving him a full ride scholarship to come to this university.
Even though his athletics are through.
Even though your athletics through the roof. So it was either that or go to JUCO, and I was not going to JUCO. That is another ball game. Yeah. So definitely like, that was like how I use it as a business. So then when you get to college, you're like, hey, I'm going to use this as a business. So most people either graduate, you go to a bank, you graduate, you're a fitness coach, you graduate, you're, what else? You go back home, or you graduate and you stay. So for me, I was like, I have four options.
When you're at Fordham.
When you're at Fordham. So I was like, all right, I don't want to be another guy that graduates and be a coach. No disrespect to them. Those people make a lot of money. If you're really good at it, you work at like the gyms.
Yeah.
So, but I was like, all right, how do I make money from this? And Fordham has one of the best like media studies programs, and you get a mentor or you just mix and mingle until you find the right people. So for me, I was like, I want to get into advertising. So this is straight from football as the business launching me into the advertising world. So a girl that was in my cohort that we were like really good friends graduated. I'm like, I have no job. But now she's like, hey, I have assistant role on this account. This is still from football. I have an assistant role on this account. Do you want to come interview for it? And I'm getting the job. So people don't realize that all started from high school football. Yeah. Launching me all the way to my first job.
You use it as a vehicle.
I use my vehicle.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and so it sounds like growing up through high school, you knew your strengths.
Yep.
You also knew your weaknesses.
Correct.
And I think that's huge to know exactly what you're good at and exactly what you need help with. And so you said you met a lot of people. You had some types of mentors or people that you could talk to. So who are some of the people in your life that actually helped you get to the place where you are today?
I would say one of my friends' dad, his name is Ryan Payne. His dad has a water and waste management company.
Yep.
And he was probably one of the more like wealthy people in our neighborhood, I would say. probably one of the only ones with like a pool and a guest house. But he definitely taught me about finding your way through your niche. Like most people know, there's a lot of rich people. There's only so many wealthy people. So he was like,
there's a huge difference.
There's a huge difference. You can be rich. Okay, how many millionaires are there? Thousands. There's under 100 billionaires.
Yeah.
And everyone knows their face. Everyone knows how much they're worth. Well, counted how much they're worth. But he was just like, hey, you have to find a way to establish yourself, whether that's you're going to use your sports or you find another creative outlet, because grades were like, okay, my grades were fine. Like, B student, I'm fine with that. Got through college, but it was like, what else are you good at? So sports and creativity were my two sole passions, sole strengths. So I learned how to apply myself using those two.
Yeah. Okay. And so hopping to another topic. And this is something I think that we talked about a lot, just going through the years. This is about investing for yourself. When we had first met, even though we were around the same age, right, you really weren't investing in the stock market. We had a bunch of conversations about why you should, but now you are. So talk about that process of, not really investing to where you are now, where you text me out of the blue about new companies that are coming on and you say, hey, what do you think about this company?
So for me, I'm a big like Wolf on Wall Street fan. And I watched that movie, I was like, I'm not about to just put my money into thin air and hopefully it gains money over a certain time. But then I start reading into it. It's like, well, there's ways that structures you can put your money into the stock market, and over time you make money. And it's following trades, following trends. And for me, I was like, all right, do I want to go find a broker at like an E-Trade or all the other companies? And I was like, you know what? I want to test and learn myself. And you recommended Robinhood. And I was like, oh, let me try what this is. So Robinhood, if you don't know, there's no fees for trading at any publicly traded stock. So for me, I was like, I came in, I'm going to buy the ones that I know. I'm going to buy Uber. I'm going to buy, what is it? What's Dunkin' Donuts? What's it under? I'm going to buy fast casual. I buy only things that I know I use or that I'm familiar with. So like for me, I'm very familiar with the pharmaceutical industry now, because when a company comes out, it's like, hey, we have a cure for this. I guarantee you their stock is probably like $5 to like $10, but in 2 weeks, that stock is going to be trading at 40.
Yeah.
And if you put $10 in, you know how much you're going to get out. So people don't realize there's smart ways to go about it. And then there's also ways that you just take $100 or $200, put it in the S&P 500, let it grow over time. But for me, I saw the stock market. It's like more like, I wouldn't say, what's the word? Residual?
Yeah.
Is that what you guys use? You smart bank guys? I use it as more of like test and learn, until the point where I'm like, okay, I know for a fact these are the stocks I know I'm going to make money in. But then I know you were way more vested in that space of like the CDs and the bonds and all the other types of ways to invest in the market.
Yeah. But it's good to, to hear you say, okay, you're using it as a testing ground, right? Because that's the best way to learn, by doing. And I do talk a lot about, and I actually started this platform to promote things like personal finance, financial literacy, savings, investing, because not a lot of people actually do it.
No.
They hear about it, right? They hear about people making money in the stock market, or they hear about these investment accounts or CDs or, 401ks, but they don't do it, right?
They're scared.
And they're scared. But why is that though?
The worst thing you could do is lose that $100. And what do people do with $100? That $100 can go to the bar. The $100 you're buying clothes you're probably gonna wear once and never wear. The $100 you're gonna pay for your Metro card. So for me, it was more of like, I'm gonna spend this $100. Let me just put it into something that might make me $200. So it was more of like taking the initiative. Some people are like, oh, I really want to make 10 grand. I'm like, oh, how are you gonna make that 10 grand? Are you gonna borrow 5 and flip it, or are you gonna buy a lawnmower and mow 2,000 yards and you're making your 10 grand? But for me, it was like, all right, I want to make $100. That's it. That was my goal. And I'm like, okay, I've made $60 so far. And some people don't think that's a huge thing, but I've put in less than $100 and I've made 60.
Yeah.
So I'm making my good ROI.
There. So you had to prove the concept. Now you know it's.
Now I know it's real. Like most people think the stock market is like an imaginary thing. A guy that works at some bank downtown with a tie and he's sleazy, has a platinum Amex card, and like he curses his wife. But it's actually a platform set up to make huge corporations and normal day-to-day people like us money. So I think it's smart if you do it by the right way. And ask people like your friends, like you're one of my go-to people, if not one of my best friends, that I'm like, hey, did you hear about the stocks about to come out? And it's like, I don't think that company is worth it because there's 10 other companies that are actually better. Or I ask you about stuff like the cannabis industry, and you're like, I wouldn't invest in that because X, Y, and Z. We don't have to go into that, but I always ask people that are knowledgeable in the space. So like fitness.
Yep.
I'm like, would you buy Nike or Adidas? And most people are like, neither, because those stocks are always going to fluctuate based on what they have in market.
Exactly.
So you would buy the manufacturer, because no matter, people know, Nike, Adidas, any other brands are made in the same factories. So those are the people that you should invest in, not the brands per se. But that's just like an example of like how I learned. So I'm like, oh, Nike, that's always going to be up. But whenever stuff like Cap comes out, or whenever someone dies, like the stock's going to plummet or it's going to skyrocket. And most people aren't willing to take that risk.
But either way, like you said, if you're investing in the derivative company, the people who provide them their raw goods, or do
before
shipping,
it has the stamp on it.
Exactly. And it's good to hear you're learning about.
Oh, I'm in it now. I do my research every single morning. I get on, I go and I read what I love to read. I love Goldman Sachs website. I love Trading Post. I like also Robinhood has like the trends.
They do. It
lets you know like
stories.
the 5 stocks, and then it also has the it'll give you like a rating, 100% or 50% trade, 100% buy, and like just little things like that. People don't realize like they're telling you how to make this money,
and it's free information.
And it's free information with no guy on the other side like, I think you should buy this, and he's getting a cut no matter what you win or lose. So for me, like I make it my job to learn now because I work in an industry where it's like someone can get paid way less than you but no more than you, and that's their one up on you. So if I know about these 4 stocks that are going to be hitting, I'm going to make sure that I research it before I buy it, in a sense where someone's like, oh, this looks like it's going to pop. Let me put my money into it. And they lose $3,000 because they didn't read or look up or just even check the Robinhood app to tell them don't buy this stock.
Yeah. And so talking about investing, right? We just talked about investing in the stock market.
Yep.
Another big thing that we both do is invest in ourselves. And that comes in the form of gear, whether it's, building a podcast, buying a camera, or, building a website. So what are some ways that you invest in yourself that may not pay off now, but you think will pay off in the long run?
For me, I would say equipment. So when I got that first bump, I was like, whoa, got a little extra change after I paid rent. I was like, you know what? Let me not just go burn this on just hanging out with my friends or drinking. I'm going to buy 2 new cameras. So I bought a Super 8 camera. Shot stuff with that already, got paid for those. Bought a new lens, so whenever I was at the concerts, I wouldn't get bumped. I can zoom in from in the middle of the crowd, and I don't have to worry about, oh, I have a press pass, but I still, like, there's 30 other photographers that are trying to get that same shot.
Yep.
So I got the new lens for that. What else did I got? New bags, bought new lights, just like things like that I know over time is gonna make me more money than going and buy a new pair of shoes. Or I'm trying to think, what else did I buy? I would say
you're investing in your knowledge as well. And,
yes,
and
researching,
and not just your money.
Yep,
but your time, because you watch 100,000 YouTube
videos is my
go-to, or articles or things like that to learn your craft, which a lot of people don't do. But YouTube is free information. Google is free.
I don't know how it's still free.
Right.
I thank you, Google, because YouTube, as you know, when we first moved in, people would come like, "Why are you always watching YouTube?" I'm like, this is free. I don't have to go to class. Like,
exactly.
You have to pay for a class downtown to learn ISO. I don't have time for that. I can literally go on YouTube. What does ISO mean? And it's going to be a nerdy guy in his bedroom letting you know about apertures and ISO. So I'm like, if this platform is free and it's here for me to use,
why not?
Why not? So I watch tons of hours of that. I'm always Googling stuff. And some people use like Instagram and stuff for like, just being social, but I use it for research. Like, if someone posts a picture that's a photographer, I'm looking like, all right, some people will call out, oh, I use Lightroom or I use Photoshop or I hate both, use this new app because the retina on it is better or it's easier to crop or just like little nuances like that. Like that's what I use Instagram for, is like as a tool where it's like, oh, this person did this and it worked. Oh, no, I don't need to go to class for that. This is free knowledge. So yeah, definitely that's how I invest.
Okay. And one other topic before we get into some of your goals and your 5-year plan. When we first start knowing each other. You were saying that you were trying to build your credit up.
Yep.
Right? And first, it didn't start out as good. But then you built it up over a couple of years. Talk about that progress of at first not even knowing what was going into your credit to now where you actually have built up that solid credit score.
So for me, I graduated college. I had no money in my bank account, no credit, because I didn't have any loans, or my parents didn't open credit cards for me when I was in high school or college. So my friend, lovely friend of mine, probably one of my best friends as well, her name is Wanda. Shout out to Wanda. She's like, what's your credit score? I was like, I don't have a credit score. And she was like, well, that's terrible because you're an adult and you live in New York. So she helped me open a Discover account. She was like, she showed me the steps, and over a while, like, you pay it off immediately after you charge whatever. It could be $10, you pay it off immediately. And over time, that builds up rapport with the credit. They're like, all right, this person is trustworthy. They start raising your score, and they start opening your allowance. So it gets the credit limit. So then over a while, I'm like, oh, wait, my card's starting to open up a little bit. And then I got to this 500. I was like, oh, 500, like, this is amazing. And then you start reading up, you can't rent an apartment in New York unless you have like 640 and above. So I'm like, oh gosh.
And some of the places we were looking at, you had to have a credit score of 700 or above, like, or else you can't even apply.
You can't even apply. So it was like, man, I'm like, I need to step my game up. So started, whenever I do something, I use my credit card no matter what. If they take the credit, I'm using the credit card because that's going to build up my credit score. So I kept doing it. Second apartment we got, my credit score was up to like 630. I'm like, all right, I'm getting there. And then last year I finally hit 700. I was like, all right, let's go. So then I got another credit card that I use for business, and that raised my credit score. So I just didn't know that there's certain, like, on your FICO score, it'll let you know this is what the credit is including.
Like the categories.
The categories. And I'm just like, oh, I didn't know.
Your utilization, the types of accounts you have, the age of the accounts, right? The balances you're carrying, if you pay them off, like things like that. Those are all things that go into your credit.
And I did not know. I thought credit score was only based on like how much you owe.
It's not.
That's a plethora of stuff.
Exactly. That is exactly right. So now that we're at the point where we can talk about some of your goals, I know you had some things laid out. So I do want a chance to give you some time to talk about your 2020 goals.
Yep.
And also get into your 5-year plan as well.
Cool. So for my 2020 goals, one of them, if anyone knows me, I love Kanye West and I love Adidas as a brand because they make me feel fearless. They make me feel confident. They make me feel creative. And those are two of the most iconic things in my life, I would say. So I always wanted a goal to shoot for Yeezy, the brand itself. I was blessed enough and fortunate enough to go shoot at a Sunday service, and I was just like, wow.
Explain Sunday service.
Oh, Sunday service, if people don't know, is the collective. It's like a choir. It has church elements to it, but I wouldn't call it church itself. It's more of like an experience. So like, it's usually on a Saturday, and they'll find a location, and there's a choir that comes. They sing songs based on like old hymns or songs that Kanye produced, or songs off the album, or songs off his album. And it's just like a good experience for people to come, like, hey, like, without thinking about it, you're in a church setting, I would say. But it's just like a good experience. You come, just like hang out with other people that are like-minded like yourself, or you just go, just like you just be part of it. So that's like something that one of my friends hooked me up, ticket. It's like, hey, I know you really wanted to come shoot this, and they let me bring my camera in, and I took photos, and it was a dope experience because from there in, I met 2 of the members of the choir. Yeah. And whenever they were here for New York, they were shooting for, I think, Jimmy Kimmel. And I got a text like, hey, come to, what is it? Downtown Fight Eye at the Oculus. Yeah. And I was like, oh, wait, what? Is this happening? So I get a text. I'm like, me and my girlfriend Jordan, we were like, she was like, I'm not going. She was like, I'm not going. It's 12:30. Kid you not, on a Sunday. And she was like, I'm not going. I'm like, we're going. Yeah. So we're getting an Uber from Harlem to Downtown Friday. I'm telling the Uber to like step on it, like, let's go. We get there, and they're not letting anyone in. And the guy at the door was like, do you know anyone? I was like, give the name of the people I knew. And he was like, all right, I'll let you slide. In New York, like I say, if you don't know how to finesse, you're not gonna get anywhere. So finesse my way in, and it was packed. I guess people had already knew about it, and I got late scoop. So I was like, oh man. So then I got blessed again, and they're like, all right, come stand over here. And I kid you not, we're standing there, they're warming up, and out of nowhere, the guy that I was with was like, all right, do not freak out. And I'm just like, what? And I turned to my right, Kanye West is standing next to me, and I'm just like,
your idol.
And I panicked. And I was like, oh God, do I freak out or do I just stay calm? And in my mind, I'm just like, it all happened at once. So I just stood there. I didn't do anything. I was like, oh God. And he turned around and I looked and I was like, oh, what up, Kanye? And he was just like, obviously he's focused on, he's shooting for Jimmy Kimmel. So he gave me the quick like, hey, what's up? And from there on, I was like, all right, this is gonna happen. Now that I was able to like take that in, like I met the person, didn't get to dap him up, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I met the person that I really want to work for. So I'm like, all right, that's in my goal. I'm going to shoot for that brand. Knowing that like I have this product, I have Slated, I've done stuff for other companies. I feel like we have the team to shoot like Yeezy brand. So that's definitely one of my 2020 goals.
Okay. And so talk about your 5-year plan.
5-year plan, I would say save $40K for a condo.
Mm-hmm.
That's
a condo in New York or LA? So
we're trying to decide if we want to buy in the New York market so that we're bi-coastal, or that we want to buy in LA so that we can live in it. Yeah. So that's like the conversation we're having now, but that's definitely like one of the 5-year plans. Another one would be to buy a high-end digital camera for shooting. Yes. So either a Red or a Blackmagic. It's not free press, but these are the cameras I like. Blackmagic or I'm trying to think what else. Those are probably like the two I can like have my eyes on. Red obviously is super expensive camera, but if I have the money, I'm going to invest in that because that'll make me millions. So.
Well, definitely. Okay. Well, Lourenzo Smith, thank you for being on Money Talks, the podcast. I do, before we get out of here, I want to let you give you a chance to talk about some of your social media accounts. Mm-hmm. So if people want to reach out to you and learn more about your brand, where should they go?
They can go to our Slated Vision Instagram. The website's in the bio, Slated Vision. Or you can find me at lorenzo.smith on Instagram. And most of the content I've been posting is on the Slated page. That's going to have our videos, anyone we shoot with, or just like people to look out for. So we shout people out all the time. Yep. So when it gets to the point where we're paying for playing, hey, just know you could do that as well. But yeah, you can catch me there, or you can catch me producing in the background for the show.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So Lourenzo Smith, thank you for coming on Money Talks, the podcast, hosted by Becoming Financially Fit. I appreciate you taking the time.
No problem. It's been a pleasure.